welcome back. Or, if this is your first night here, welcome to Sleepy Voyage. You've carried enough today. The weight of hours that stretched too long, the noise that never quite stopped, the feeling that rest might be somewhere just beyond reach. All of that can be set down now. There's no need to hold on to any of it here. Tonight, there's a place waiting. A cabin where firelight holds steady against winter darkness, where snow falls without sound, where nothing asks anything of you. A place that exists only to shelter, to hold space, to let you simply be. Before we step into this quiet refuge together, I invite you to subscribe to the channel. By doing so, you ensure this sanctuary will always be here waiting for you on difficult nights. If tonight's story brings you peace, your support helps keep this space alive for others who need it too. There's no pressure, only an invitation to return whenever you need. Now, let the world outside fade. Let the door close behind you. Step into the warmth. The fire has already been burning for a while, not brightly, just enough to fill the room with a steady, familiar warmth. The flames move slowly across the logs, never in a hurry, never demanding attention. The light they cast reaches the walls in waves of amber, touches the ceiling, retreats, returns. The pattern repeats without variation, without urgency. Outside, the night moves at its own quiet pace. Snow falls without sound, each flake drifting down through darkness as if it has nowhere else to be, no destination it must reach. The world beyond the window has softened into abstract motion, white descending through black, constant, unhurried, unremarkable in its steadiness. There is no urgency in the air. Nothing approaches the cabin through the snow. Nothing waits beyond the circle of firelight. Nothing expects arrival or departure or any kind of change. The night simply is, and within it, the cabin simply exists, holding its small pocket of warmth against the cold. Inside the room, everything has already settled. The chair rests where it always does, facing the hearth, its leather worn soft by years of use. The floor holds the weight of silence, like something solid, something that can be felt. Even the shadows seem comfortable staying where they are, draped across corners and gathered beneath furniture, content in their places. The warmth doesn't rise or fall, it simply stays. Radiates from the hearth with patient constancy, fills the space between objects, presses gently against exposed skin. The fire feeds itself from logs that were placed hours ago, arranged to burn slowly through the long stretch of darkness. No one needs to tend it. Not yet. It knows its work and does it without supervision. The snow outside continues, slow and unremarkable, as though it has been falling this way for hours already and will likely continue long after this moment passes. Each flake follows the one before it, joins the accumulation on the windowsill, on the roof, on the ground beyond the glass. The world outside grows quieter with each layer. Sound itself seems to sink beneath the weight of white. There's a certain ease in knowing that. Nothing beginning, nothing ending, just continuation. Just the steady persistence of snow falling and fire burning and night holding its place in the rotation of hours. Time hasn't stopped, lost its insistence on being counted. The room asks nothing, waits for no acknowledgement or appreciation or any kind of response. It simply offers what it has: warmth, shelter, the low murmur of fire speaking its quiet language of consumption and release, the visual anchor of flames that never quite repeat their patterns, but never surprise either. A single window frames the falling snow. The glass holds condensation along its edges where warmth meets the outside cold. Tiny beads of water gather, run down in thin trails, freeze into delicate patterns of ice that catch the firelight when the flames surge slightly higher. The window offers no view so much as a portal to movement, to the hypnotic descent of snow against darkness, to the world reduced to its simplest elements. The walls stand solid around this space, log construction chinked with mortar that has held for decades. Small gaps where winter air finds its way inside, but only in threads too thin to matter. The ceiling holds the heat. The floor, though cool beneath, provides grounding. A reminder that comfort exists not in the absence of cold, but in the presence of both, in the space between. Against the far wall, a narrow bed waits beneath a thick quilt. The quilt shows age in its fading, in the way its patterns have blurred through washing, through use, through years of providing exactly what quilts are meant to provide. Beside it, a small table holds a glass of water. The water catches firelight, holds it, transforms clear liquid into something amber and alive. Near the window, a wooden chair wears a coat draped across its back. The coat still holds the shape of shoulders, of someone who removed it hours ago and hasn't returned to claim it. The fabric has absorbed the room's warmth, become part of the space, settled into stillness like everything else here has settled. The fire speaks in the language of wood releasing what it holds, a gentle crackle when sap finds heat, the soft collapse of a log settling deeper into coals, the whisper of flames converting solid into light and warmth, and the thinnest thread of smoke that rises, invisible, up the chimney into the night. Between these sounds, silence lives, not the aggressive silence of held breath, but the natural silence of a space that has stopped demanding attention. The silence has texture here, weight. It presses gently, invites ears to stop straining toward what might come next. There is no next. There is only now, stretching in all directions, infinite and unhurried. The silence creates no pressure for sound. It simply exists as the natural state of things when the world grows quiet enough to notice what remains. From outside, nothing arrives. No wind strong enough to register. No animals moving through the snow-heavy forest. No distant sounds of human activity. The valley has emptied itself of everything but weather. The snow falls. The trees stand under their white burden. The night extends in all directions. And the cabin, small and warm and entirely sufficient, holds its ground. The air inside carries warmth, but not heat. It wraps around anything it touches with gentleness. Where the fire's influence fades near the walls, the air grows cooler, but never cold. The cabin holds temperature the way it holds light, distributed unevenly, but always enough, always sufficient for what this space intends. Against the skin, the air feels lived in, not stale, but inhabited. It carries the faint trace of wood smoke woven through with something mineral, the scent of cold stone warming, the ghost of wool, and underneath everything, the clean emptiness of winter itself. The smell that isn't quite a smell, but rather the absence of summer's abundance, of spring's sweetness, of autumn's decay. The floor beneath holds the day's cold. Even near the fire, the wood planks retain a coolness that reminds feet they're standing on something solid, something connected to earth and stone and frozen ground beneath. The contrast between this coolness and the warmth above creates balance. A reminder that comfort exists not in absolute warmth, but in the presence of both, in the space between extremes. The scent of wood smoke threads through everything, not thick or overwhelming, but persistent, present in every breath without demanding attention. The smoke carries within it the ghost of forests, of trees that grew and fell and dried and now release their stored sunlight back into the world as heat and light, and this gentle scent that speaks of winter, of survival, of humans finding ways to push back against darkness without defeating it. On the mantel above the fire, a single brass candlestick stands empty. No candle fills it. Perhaps there was one once. Perhaps it burned down years ago and was never replaced. Or perhaps the candlestick simply exists as object, as presence, as something that belongs here without needing to fulfill its original purpose. It catches firelight on its tarnished surface, glows dully, offers no function except to be exactly what it is. Before the hearth, a braided rug covers the wooden floor. Its colors have faded to muted earth tones that might have once been distinct but now blend into something unified. Blues and browns and grays that read simply as age, as presence, as something that has been here long enough to stop being noticed. The rug surface shows wear-in paths, places where feet have moved repeatedly over years, depressions that tell the story of human passage without words. A figure sits in the leather chair. He has been sitting for some time, long enough that his body has settled completely into the chair's embrace, finding the worn places, the depressions shaped by previous bodies, the spots where leather has softened to something almost like fabric, long enough that the chair no longer registers as separate from him. They have become a single thing, man and chair and the space they occupy together. He faces the fire, but watches it without intention. His gaze rests on the flames, the way it might rest on anything. Present, but not searching. Seeing, but not analyzing. The light plays across his face, highlights the lines that bracket his mouth, the deeper creases at the corners of his eyes. These aren't young lines. They speak of years, of expressions repeated until they became permanent, of time leaving its mark the way water marks stone. His hands rest on the chair's arms. The fingers are still, not tense, not clenched, simply present. No fidgeting, no restlessness. Just hands at rest, palms down, weight distributed evenly. He wears a flannel shirt, blue and grey checks, the fabric worn soft with washing. The sleeves are rolled to his elbows. On his feet, thick wool socks. The boots he wore inside rest near the door, snow still melting from their treads into a small, dark pool on the wooden floor. Before reaching for anything, before picking up anything, he touches it first. Just the tips of his fingers against the surface. Testing temperature perhaps, or texture, or simply making contact before commitment. It's a habit so ingrained he likely doesn't notice it anymore. The cup beside him, the book he isn't reading, the blanket folded on the chair's arm. Each thing receives this small acknowledgement before he decides whether to move it, use it, or leave it alone. There's a tiredness in him that goes beyond physical exhaustion. It lives in the set of his shoulders, in the way his head rests against the chair's high back, in the absence of any desire to move simply for movement's sake. This isn't the tiredness that comes from a hard day's work. This is the tiredness that accumulates over seasons, over choices made and unmade, over time spent holding things together until the holding became the only thing he knew how to do. On the small table beside him rests a cup. The cup is old ceramic, cream-colored, with a handle that has been repaired at some point, the crack still visible as a thin, dark line. The cup holds tea that has gone cold. He made it hours ago with intention, then forgot about it as the fire caught his attention. As the snow began to fall, as time stretched and softened into something unmeasurable, beside the cup, a book. The cover shows where at the corners, the spine cracked from previous readings. He brought the book with him, thinking perhaps tonight he would read. But the book remains closed. The fire proved more compelling. Or perhaps reading required a kind of attention he didn't want to give. Perhaps simply sitting, simply being present without narrative or story or someone else's words was enough. Near the hearth, a basket holds additional wood. Split logs, each one carefully chosen for size and dryness. He won't need to add wood yet. The fire burns steadily, requires nothing, but the presence of the wood offers comfort. The knowledge that when the fire does begin to fade, when the cold begins to creep closer, there is more. There is always more. He shifts in the chair, not because of discomfort, but because bodies shift. Because stillness, absolute, is impossible. The leather creaks softly beneath him. His weight redistributes. One hand moves from the chair's arm to rest against his chest. He breathes. The breath is deep, deliberate. Not the breathing of sleep, but the breathing of someone teaching himself to slow down, to match the room's rhythm, to stop racing towards some imagined destination. Through the window, the snow continues. He watches it now with more attention. Each flake visible against the darkness beyond the glass, catching the faint light from inside, glowing briefly before passing from view. They don't fall in straight lines. They drift. They wander. Some press against the glass, stick for a moment, then slide down, leaving tiny wet trails before freezing into patterns of ice. How long has it been snowing? He arrived in afternoon light, grey and flat. By the time he had brought in wood, arranged the kindling, coaxed the first flames into being, darkness had already begun its descent. The snow started then. Or perhaps it started earlier, and he simply didn't notice until night made each flake visible against the void. There's something about the snow that permits surrender. The way it falls without question or doubt. The way it simply adds itself to what came before, layer upon layer, with no concern for when it might stop. It doesn't negotiate with the world. It simply is. Perhaps that's what draws his attention. The absolute commitment to the present moment. The complete absence of anything beyond this single action, repeated infinitely, accumulation without agenda. A memory surfaces. Not forced, not summoned, simply arriving the way memories do when the mind stops defending against them. A cabin, but not this one, smaller, cruder. The mountains of Colorado, not this valley in Vermont. His father's hands teaching him to split wood, to stack it properly so air could circulate, so it would dry through summer and be ready for winter. The memory carries no pain, just presence. The sound of the maul striking wood, the smell of fresh split pine, his father's voice, patient and clear, explaining that good firewood is made in summer, that planning for cold happens when the world is warm, that survival is mostly about preparation no one sees. He allows the memory to rest in him, doesn't push it away, doesn't cling to it, simply lets it exist, lets it wash through him and recede like water. His father has been gone 7 years now. The grief has softened. What remains is this, these moments of teaching, these small transfers of knowledge that seemed unimportant at the time, but now form the foundation of competence. The knowledge of how to build a fire that lasts, how to read wood, how to be patient with flame. The fire shifts. A log settles deeper. Sparks rise up the chimney, tiny orange stars ascending into darkness. He watches them until they disappear. Then his gaze returns to the general amber glow, the steady pulse of heat that asks nothing, gives everything. Perhaps this is what he needed, not answers, not solutions, not the complex architecture of life reassembled into something manageable. Just this, fire, snow, silence, the permission to sit without purpose, to be present without achievement, to exist without justification. The world outside this cabin continues its relentless complexity, demands weight, in digital spaces he has intentionally left behind. Conversations hang unfinished. Problems persist in his absence. But here, tonight, in this room where firelight holds the darkness at arm's length, none of that can reach him. The snow sees to that. The isolation sees to that. His choice to come here, to step away, to allow himself this space, sees to that. He thinks about time, how it moves differently in places like this. In the city, time is aggressive. It pushes and pulls and demands constant awareness. Seconds matter. Minutes are scheduled. Hours are blocked and allocated and defended. But here, time softens, loses its edges, becomes something closer to a substance than a structure, something that can be entered and inhabited rather than parceled and spent. He has no watch. His phone sits in the car, turned off, already gathering dust. He has no way to measure the passage of hours except by the fire's consumption of wood, by the snow's accumulation on the windowsill, by the gradual deepening of his own fatigue. And this absence of measurement feels like freedom, like release from a contract he never quite agreed to but found himself bound by nonetheless. The leather chair holds him with the intimacy of long acquaintance. Every curve of it has been shaped by bodies seeking comfort. He is not the first to sit here watching fire, won't be the last. This chair has witnessed countless nights of solitude, of reflection, of people coming to places like this to find whatever it is they've lost in the noise. He takes comfort in that continuity, in being part of a long tradition of humans seeking temporary refuge from complexity. Somewhere in the night, an owl calls. The sound is distant, muffled by snow, but it penetrates the cabin's walls, reaches his ears. 3 notes descending, a question asked into darkness. He waits, but no answer comes. The owl falls silent. Perhaps it flew on. Perhaps it settled into waiting. Perhaps it asked its question and found the silent response enough. He understands that impulse. To call into darkness, not expecting answer, but simply to confirm existence. To break silence, not because silence is uncomfortable, but because sometimes a living thing needs to announce itself. Needs to press sound into the void and know that it can, that it still has voice, that it hasn't dissolved completely into quietude. But he doesn't call out. His voice hasn't been used since arriving. Since stepping from the car into the cold and carrying his bag inside and closing the door against the world, he has made sounds. The grunt of effort moving wood, the small noises of arranging fire and settling into space, but no words. And the absence of words feels appropriate, feels honest. What would he say? To whom? The fire requires no speech. The snow waits for no commentary. Another memory, this one sharper. His ex-wife's voice, not angry, but exhausted, telling him that living with him was like living with someone who was always preparing for disaster, always watching the horizon for the next thing that might go wrong, never quite able to settle into the moment because the moment wasn't safe enough, wasn't controlled enough. She was right. He knows that now. Knew it even then, though knowing didn't equal ability to change. The vigilance that kept him employed, kept him successful, kept him moving forward through a world that rewarded preparation and planning. That same vigilance made him impossible to rest beside, made him someone who brought tension into every room, who couldn't sit on the couch without mentally cataloging everything that needed fixing, planning, addressing. The divorce was inevitable. Came with a kind of relieved sadness on both sides, an acknowledgement that love wasn't enough when one person couldn't stop defending against invisible threats, when one person lived perpetually in the future while the other begged for presence in the now. He wonders where she is tonight, hopes she's happy, hopes she found someone who knows how to rest, how to be still, how to watch snow without analyzing weather patterns or worrying about roof weight or planning for the roads to be cleared. Someone who can simply say it's beautiful and mean it, without the qualification that always followed his observations. The thought doesn't hurt the way it used to. It just exists. Part of his history. Part of how he became this person sitting in this chair, learning slowly, painfully slowly, to let his shoulders drop, to unclench his jaw, to stop monitoring every variable and simply trust that the fire will keep burning, the cabin will keep standing, the snow will keep falling, and none of it requires his management. The fire has burned lower, the flames less ambitious now, content to glow rather than dance. He should add wood. The practical part of his mind notes this, catalogues it as a task pending, but he waits. There's something compelling about watching the fire diminish, about allowing the natural cycle to complete without intervention. The room will grow cooler, the light will fade, and only then will he rise, select new wood, feed the flames back to fullness, not preventing the decline, but allowing it and then responding. He notices this, notices himself noticing it, a tiny shift in pattern, an experiment in allowing rather than preventing. The anxiety that usually rises when he sees something fading, something declining, something moving toward a state that might require action, that anxiety doesn't come, or comes so softly he can choose not to engage it, can simply observe it, acknowledge it, let it pass like a cloud across sun. This is new, this ability to watch his own thoughts without being consumed by them. He's been trying since the divorce, since the recognition that the way he moved through the world was unsustainable, was damaging, was making him into someone he didn't want to be. Therapy helped, medication helped, but mostly what's helping is time and practice, and moments like this where he can sit with the knowledge that something needs attention and choose to wait, choose to trust, choose to believe that he will respond when responding is truly needed and not before. The cold begins to assert itself, subtle at first, a slight change in the air against his face, the warmth receding from the extremities of the room, concentrating closer to the hearth. His feet, in their thick socks, register the cooling floor, not uncomfortable, just different, a gradient between states. He rises. The movement feels good after long stillness. His body protests slightly, joints stiff, but the protest is mild. He crosses to the wood basket, kneels before it. The movement brings him closer to the hearth, into the remaining sphere of warmth. He selects 3 logs, not the largest, not the smallest, medium pieces that will burn steadily, that will sustain heat through the hours remaining before dawn. Before placing them in the fire, he pauses, holds one log in both hands, feels its weight, the texture of bark, the coolness of wood that has been inside, sheltered, but still carries winter's chill. He thinks about the tree this was, growing somewhere in these mountains, drawing water from soil, pulling carbon from air, converting sunlight into mass over decades, then cut, split, dried, brought here to be consumed, transformed, released back into the world as light and heat. There's something profound in that exchange, something about time compressed, a tree's slow accumulation of years, of rings, of patient growth, all released in a single night's burning. Energy stored and energy released. Nothing lost, really. Just transformed, just redistributed. The tree continues to give warmth long after its final season of growth. He places the logs carefully, one at a time, arranging them to allow airflow, to create space for flame to move between them. The fire accepts the offering. Within minutes, the new wood begins to catch. The flames grow, the light strengthens. The warmth expands back into the corners it had been vacating. He returns to the chair, settles in. The room feels different now. Not just warmer, but somehow more alive. The act of tending the fire has created a kind of conversation. The fire asked for fuel. He responded. The fire answered with renewed heat. This simple exchange feels significant in a way he can't quite articulate. A reminder that care creates response. That attention to what sustains life creates more life. Outside, the snow has thickened. The flakes fall faster now, more densely. They obscure the far edge of the clearing, turn the world beyond the window into abstract movement. White on black, constant descent. The accumulation on the windowsill has grown. Small drifts forming against the glass where wind presses snow into available spaces. He watches and understands that he's arrived at the state he came seeking. Not sleep, necessarily, but rest. True rest. The kind that happens when vigilance finally releases its grip. When the body stops preparing for threat and accepts that here, now, there is none. The cabin protects him. The fire warms him. The snow isolates him. And in this isolation, this temporary removal from the world of demands and expectations and the exhausting work of being acceptable, he finds something he hasn't felt in longer than he can remember. Peace, not the absence of problems. Those wait for him still, will be there when he returns. But the absence of the belief that he must solve them all right now, this moment, immediately, or face catastrophe. The understanding that he can rest. That rest is not weakness or avoidance or failure. That rest is required. That he is allowed. The fire stays steady. The snow falls without pause. The night deepens around the cabin, and he sits in the amber light, feeling something within him that has been clenched for years begin to soften, begin to release, begin to believe that maybe, perhaps, finally, he can stop defending against the world and simply exist within it. His eyes grow heavy, not the desperate heaviness of exhaustion, but the natural heaviness of a body recognizing safety, recognizing that it can lower its guard, that sleep, when it comes, will be allowed to take him, that nothing waits in the darkness that requires his vigilance, that he has done enough, been enough, that now he can simply be. The flames paint shadows on the walls, slow movements, gentle shifts. The whole room seems to breathe with the fire's rhythm, in and out, expansion and contraction, the pulse of combustion, the heartbeat of warmth. He lets his head rest against the chair's back, lets his hands go loose on the armrests, lets his breathing slow to match the room's rhythm, the fire, the snow, the night, all of it moving at a pace that asks nothing, that simply is. And in this moment, in this space between waking and sleep, between tension and release, between the person he has been and the person he might become, he finds what he came searching for without knowing he was searching. Permission to rest, to stop, to simply be here, now, in this chair, in this room, watching fire consume wood and snow fall through darkness, to let the world continue without his constant intervention, to trust that morning will arrive whether he watches for it or not, that the fire will sustain or fade as fires do, that life will continue its complex unfolding and he can choose when to engage and when to simply observe. The realization doesn't arrive as epiphany, it simply settles, like snow, like ash, layer by layer, accumulation without drama, understanding without revelation. He has carried too much for too long. And here, tonight, he can set some of it down. Not all of it, not forever, but some. For now, and that is enough. His breathing deepens. The boundary between waking and sleep grows thin. The fire's warmth wraps around him like a blanket. The snow's silence presses gently against the windows. The cabin holds him in its small embrace. The flames continue their slow dance. The wood continues its transformation. The night continues its patient journey toward dawn. And he, exhausted and guarded, and finally allowing himself to rest, begins to drift. The leather chair knows this moment, has witnessed it countless times. The moment when vigilance releases, when the body stops defending, when sleep is allowed to arrive not as collapse, but as natural conclusion to a day that has been lived, to a journey that has been taken, to a choice that has been made to step away, to rest, to trust that the world will turn without constant supervision. His last conscious thought is about the fire, how it will burn through the night, how he will wake to coals, how he will add wood in the dark hours if needed, how the cabin knows how to hold heat, how he is safe here, how this moment, this simple moment of warmth and shelter and the sound of snow against glass is enough, more than enough. The fire burns low but steady. The snow falls thick and silent. The night stretches, long and patient. And in the worn leather chair, wrapped in wool and flannel and the amber glow of firelight, he rests. Not just his body, though his body finally releases its accumulated tension. Not just his mind, though his mind finally stops its relentless cataloguing and planning, but something deeper, something that has been holding him upright through sheer force of will. That part of him that hasn't trusted the world to be gentle, that hasn't believed rest was allowed. That part, finally, lets go. The cabin breathes around him. The walls creak slightly as wood adjusts to temperature. The fire whispers its constant song. The snow writes its slow text against the window, and all of it together creates a kind of lullaby. Not of words or melody, but of presence, of elements doing what they do, of night being night, of winter being winter, of a man finally allowing himself to be held by a world that, for this moment, asks nothing in return. His chest rises and falls with the rhythm of deep sleep. His hands rest loose and open. His face, in firelight, shows the softness that comes when all performance ends, when there is no one to impress, no role to fulfill, no standard to meet. Just a human being at rest in a small shelter while snow falls on all the world outside. The fire knows its work, continues steady. The wood gives itself to flame. The heat distributes itself with patient democracy. The light holds back the darkness, not with violence, but with simple, steady presence. And the night, long and dark and deep, wraps around the cabin like a blanket. The snow continues falling. Will continue through all the hours until dawn. Will bury paths and cover tracks and transform the landscape into something new and unmarked. In morning there will be work, shoveling, clearing, managing, but that is morning's concern. Tonight belongs to rest, to the fire, to the snow, to the profound luxury of stopping. And in the chair, still and quiet and finally at peace, he sleeps the way humans are meant to sleep, deep and dreamless and trusting, held by leather and wool and the amber light of fire, protected by walls and roof and the clean isolation of winter, allowed, finally, to rest. The cabin stands in the valley. The snow falls on the cabin. The fire burns in the hearth. And inside, wrapped in warmth and darkness and the gentle mathematics of combustion, a man sleeps. The world outside continues, but here, in this small space carved from winter's vastness, time has stopped insisting, has stopped measuring, has stopped demanding accounting for every moment. Here, time has remembered its older purpose, not to march or press or constrain, but to hold space, to allow unfolding, to let rest be rest. And so the night continues. The fire glows, the snow falls, the silence holds, and in the morning, when pale light finds its way through snow-heavy clouds, when the fire has burned to embers, when the cold begins to creep back into undefended corners, he will wake, will rise, will add wood and make coffee and step out into the transformed landscape. But that is morning, and morning is hours away, and those hours belong to sleep, to rest, to the deep repair that happens when bodies are finally given permission to stop, when minds are finally released from constant vigilance, when the soul is finally allowed to simply be. The fire stays steady, the snow falls soft, the night holds gentle, and in the leather chair, in the amber light, in the small warm space between cold and darkness, he rests, complete, safe, at peace. The cabin knows this moment, has held countless humans through countless nights of necessary surrender, will hold countless more. And for this one man, in this one night, it offers what all true shelters offer. Not just protection from elements, but permission to stop resisting, to let go, to trust. And in that trust, in that surrender, in that moment of finally allowing rest to be rest, and night to be night, and himself to be human and tired and deserving of peace, something fundamental shifts. Some small, hard thing that has been lodged beneath his ribs begins to soften. Not healing, perhaps. Not yet, but the possibility of healing. The first small step toward believing that safety might be real, that rest might be allowed, that he might, perhaps, be able to stop defending against the world long enough to remember what it feels like to be held by it. The fire crackles once, a log settles, sends up a small shower of sparks that rise and fade in the darkness of the chimney. The snow presses against the window, and the man in the chair, deep in sleep's embrace, breathes in, out, in, out. The oldest rhythm, the simplest truth, the body's steady insistence on continuing. And for this night, in this place, with fire and snow and silence as witnesses, he allows it, allows the breath, allows the rest, allows himself to be exactly what he is, human, tired, held, safe. The night deepens, the snow continues, the fire burns on, and the cabin, patient and knowing, keeps watch over the man in the chair, over the fire in the hearth, over the small, brave space carved from winter's vastness where rest is allowed and vigilance can cease in peace. Finally is possible. The world will return. Morning will insist. Life will resume its complex demands. But for now, for these hours, for this night, there is only this: fire, snow, silence, rest, and it is enough. More than enough. It is everything. The snow falls on the valley. The fire glows in the cabin, and wrapped in wool and leather and the amber embrace of firelight, he sleeps, deep and dreamless and finally at peace.